everybody. Raul here for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the great honor and pleasure of chatting with bassist for the Bad Day Blues Band, Adam Rigg.
Hello everybody. Hello, Raul. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you for asking. Adam, for many people that haven't heard your playing and all that, we are going to talk about the gig, the band, shortly. But as always, we like to get an idea how you got started in music and particularly on bass.
Yeah, sure. Well, I went straight for the bass. I didn't graduate, if that's how many people see it, from guitar. I went straight onto the bass when I was 11. As to why, I'm not entirely sure why. I think the music I first got into my first record was the Beatles. First record I ever got was a Long Tall Sally, an Italian version vinyl. And I just suddenly got into music and the Beatles. Not particularly that I noticed the bass, particularly. I just liked the Beatles as a group. Mm-hmm. Then I guess that rolled me onto 60s music. And then I found Cream. And as soon as I found Cream, well, I guess I must have been 11, I was like, right, bass, I'm on that. I want to be like Jack Bruce. Just then that was it. From then on, really got my first bass. First bass was a little 3/4 size Encore, which I saved up. It was £75, Raul. I got it from Argos here in the UK. A little 3/4 size. It didn't last me very long. I very quickly outgrew it, but I got one of those. I started a little band off in school. My buddy played guitar. We got a drummer, a little 3-piece. And for the first few years of me playing, it was always 3-piece groups I was in, always doing bluesy type rock, anything with lots of improvisation, really. So okay. I used to sing the verses, get them out of the way, get the choruses out of the way, get to the improvisation solo bits in the middle. I used to really enjoy them. We used to do, at that age, I wasn't probably songwriting till I was 15 or 16. So I was cutting my teeth on stuff like Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, that kind of era, and certainly all of the Cream songs. Lots of improvisation on the bass, probably as much, if not more than the guitar that we had in the groups of those days. And then that got me into songwriting, and I started writing songs. And I did that because the bass was my natural instrument at that point. I wasn't very good on guitars at that point, 6 strings rhythm, that is. So I used to write on bass. And that, I guess, got me into singing and playing at the same time, a la Jack Bruce. Just rolled on from there, really. And then I got into my first kind of proper band when I was 18. Because as you might be able to hear from my dulcet tones, I'm not from the south of England. I'm from the northeast, from a place called Hartlepool, which is kind of Newcastle, northeast. So I moved down south to join like a proper pro band when I was like 18. A band called The Approach, which was kind of like indie rock. And we never did that much really. We were kind of on the scene of like the Libertines and Pete Doherty and Amy Winehouse, that kind of era, that kind of scene. And that kind of music didn't really call for a lot of bass solos, funnily enough. I wasn't singing in that. I was just kind of holding down the low end, which was fine. Did that for a number of years, did okay. Continued the songwriting. And then I got to about the age of 30, Raul, and I just thought I was too old. So I packed it all in. For a couple of years, didn't do anything musically, which is a little bit odd for people to think of when you're a musician. But I guess I had other things going on in my life, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to do that for a couple of years. Until I went to a place called Ain't Nothing But the Blues, which is a very famous blues bar in England, probably the most famous blues bar in England. It's in Soho in London. If you've never been, go and check it out. And we went there. My friend dragged me down there, and they used to they still have a jam. Blues jam, very famous blues jam, on a Sunday. So you go down on a Sunday, you get drunk, you get up, and you play with all the other guys. And as soon as I went down there, I was like, right, I'm getting back into this. And then it was a bit like the A-Team, Raul. Those montage scenes in the A-Team where, or one of the movies where the guy goes, okay, I need a guitar player, I need a drummer. And I kind of grabbed the cream, if you will, of the London music blues scene, from all those jams and all those areas, all those sessions, and I put a band together. And it just took off really, really quickly as soon as I did it, to the point of me kind of thinking, I gave up a couple of years, I've wasted a couple of years, I could have had a couple of years head start on me. So I've done that for a couple of years now, and it's doing really well, the Bad Day Blues Band. And yeah, we've done well. We played some of the biggest festivals in Europe. We've been over to New York, supported Grammy Award winners. I had some minor hits in the UK. Got some great deals with some great companies. Got some great bass gear now. I'm loving it. Living the dream now. And it's happened really, really quickly in the past couple of years. So that's a whirlwind of where all started and where I went to, I guess.
Got you. Well, and picking out a couple of details, you're self-taught then?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Never had a lesson.
Okay. And I'm fascinated with the whole concept of blues. And I think one of the very interesting things is that because of our ability to communicate through the planet nowadays, we see a flow of musical concepts and ideas going to different parts of the world where blues tends to be so associated with the American music scene. And so I was mildly surprised to go, well, a blues band in the UK, that's a thing. And I've equally been impressed when I've seen like a Scottish Latin jazz band or something that I'm going, what is that? How are they, this? But tell us, is blues is coming on strong in the UK, I take it?
Yeah, it's always been relevant in the UK, the blues. I mean, if you go back to the 60s, for example, I guess rock and roll, even before the 50s, even rock and roll and the Beatles and Elvis and bands like the Animals or Cream, I guess that came from blues music. Mm-hmm. Rock and roll and early rock came from blues music from the 50s. So, and that British invasion thing like the Animals or the Beatles and stuff, kind of a lot of that was blues based, really. I mean, it's, there's a lot of 12-bar stuff in the Animals or the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. They're very, very bluesy. And they're all British bands. So I think you had that in the 60s. And then obviously you had the different genres in the 70s and 80s and 90s becoming more popular than the blues. And I guess it probably didn't die out, but it was less popular. But certainly there's, on the live scene in England and London in particular, and actually further up north, is really popular, the blues. There's a great blues scene, a lot of great blues venues. And in fact, I would say, everyone's aware of smaller venues struggling now in general, not just in this country, but around the world to stay open and stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the genres that is staying quite healthy is the blues scene. There's always young musicians coming through, enjoying it. And there's always, I think maybe because there's quite a broad spectrum of people who enjoy the blues. You've got your youngsters who are into John Mayer and stuff, but you've also got your older people who remember the Animals and they remember the Rolling Stones the first time around. So you've got a big audience, a big demographic there who are going to go and watch live music and buy records. So it's very popular in the UK, definitely in London and up north as well, actually.
What projects are you guys working on recording or what's in the works?
Well, we've got loads of stuff coming up. We've had to switch things around a little bit because of the current situation in the world. But so we signed a little record deal with a London indie label called Flick Knife. Probably their biggest act is probably Hawkwind, if you remember those guys, a 70s band. So we've signed a deal with them. We were going to put our first studio album out, but we paused it because it happened just as we all went in a lockdown here. So we couldn't get all of the manufacturers couldn't make the records and the vinyl and stuff. So we're going to pause that, I think. So the first studio album with them is going to be out probably September, October time. But it's awesome. It's awesome. I wouldn't say it was strict blues. It's more blues rock. There's some heavy stuff, which is bordering on heavy rock, Led Zeppelin-esque. And there's some lighter stuff, which is very 60s pop-esque with blues tinges like the Beatles. So there's quite a bit of something for everyone. But yeah, that's probably coming out at the end of September, October type time. We've just put out a live album, which we were going to sit on and we weren't going to put it out. It was very good. But then this all happened. We thought, let's release something like proper. Not that I'm dissing any of the stuff that's coming out, all the live streaming that's happening.
Sure.
It's happening because musicians have got this creativity bubbling up and they've got to get out because they can't gig. Mm-hmm. But there's a little frustration with that with us because we're very much a live band. It's very much about energy, and the fifth member of the band is the audience for us. I mean, we play completely differently with a large crowd at a big festival than we do to two guys in a pub. So we had this really, really good live recording, what we made at London Blues Festival. It was recorded that in January, and we got a really good video of it. So it was like, okay, let's put that out as an album now. Little treat for everyone, put that out now. So that's only came out last week, and it's doing really well, and it's had a lot of great feedback. So yeah, we've got that. That's come out. That we've got singles coming out, bits and pieces. We kind of dabble in whether we want to do albums or, well, we do want to do albums, Raul, because as a musician, you know, it's like you want to do a creative, brilliant masterpiece of an album and put it out and for people to enjoy. But unfortunately, the world's changed now, and people consume music a little bit differently, don't they, than the album. So we went through a period of going, okay, we're definitely not doing albums. We're just going to do singles because people stream on Spotify now. So we did a little run of maybe 4 or 5 singles. And then I started getting annoyed with that, saying, you know, I don't really care if people want an album. As an artist, I want to do an album. So now we're back on that train of thought that we want to do a larger, kind of more important work rather than just the singles. But lots of recording and stuff, tons of it, yeah.
Very nice. Well, and you know, that trend that you mentioned, again, we are seeing a shift where people consume their music, picking and choosing, if it were. I think that all of us that go back to the day when you would buy a record because it had that one song that you really wanted to hear. And if you were lucky, there would be a lot on there that you would like. And I remember feeling that way about a lot of the Beatles albums, that you would get them because you had heard, for example, Strawberry Fields. And then you would discover, well, wait, there's this other song here too that's really good. Or, oh, what? Now there's this one. And there was so much there. But by the same token, there were a lot of us that would buy an album because there was that one song you liked. And then there was 8 others that you're kind of going, oh, what's this about? I don't know.
Yeah. But that's part of the fun, isn't it, of music, which we're missing now, is that hunt.
Yes.
The hunt for the gems.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine now, Raul, if the Beatles came out now and you know, people were discovering them on Spotify, and most people now discover new bands through a playlist, right? So if you look at the Beatles playlist, you know, the essentials of the Beatles, you've got all the hits on there, probably 30 hits on that playlist. Listen to them and you go, yeah, great band. But if you listen that through, you'd never discover any of the B-sides of like, I don't know, like Maxwell's Silver Hammer from Abbey Road, or, you know, Chains from one of the early, some random thing. You'd never discover it because you're just listening to the hits, the world that has had the most streams, and you miss out on all of the little hidden gems. So that's a shame, I think. But I understand, you know, it's give and take. There's a lot of benefits to streaming and the way the music is now. So I think you've just got to keep hunting. If you're into a band, just keep hunting, haven't you? And don't just listen to just the hits and the playlist. Go into the deep cuts, as it were, and find the gems that are in there.
There you go. And this would be a really good time to talk about sound, because, again, gear is the extension of the musician, in your case being the bass. Tell us a little bit about what gear you're playing on. Yeah,
sure. Well, currently I am playing mainly on a Crom bass. It was a long journey. Basically, I think, you know, some bass players just collect, like, they have like 100 basses down there. I'm not one of those guys. I'm one of the guys who is searching for, like, their Excalibur. You know, some bass players are like that. Like, they just get one and they're like I've had like a 60s P bass. I went through that, the whole James Jamerson period. I went through that, and then I went, no, I want a J chord. It's got to be fretless. I want a jazz bass. And I keep searching, looking for that Excalibur. And I've had everything, Rickenbackers, all kinds. And then I saw this Crom bass. I actually saw a picture of it online. I can't remember. It was on some bass magazine online. I just saw a picture of it, and I was like, whoa, what is that? And then I got in contact with the guy, and a guy called Matthias Crom, who's he's actually a Baroque luthier from Argentina. Really nice chap, and he makes all these amazing Baroque style instruments. But he's also a bass player, so he dabbles with creating basses. And I saw one of these, and I was like, okay, I need one of those. So he made me one. He's also weirdly into quite a lot of the same basses that I was in, which I think is maybe why our styles match. So, like, he really likes Rickenbackers as well. It's got that Rickenbacker-esque look to it with the top horn. A lot of people say it's a similar in, Lemmy used to have a Rickenbacker that was, I think, hand-carved. So it's similar to that. A little bit different in construction, though. So it's a neck through. It's all maple, flare maple. It's a 3-piece, so it's the neck piece and the 2 wings. That's it. String through body, hand-wound, handmade pickups, which he makes. And he carves the top as well. And it's as light. You'd think it would be really, really heavy. It's probably the second lightest bass I've ever picked up. It's marginally lighter than the Hofner I have there. I usually use flat wounds, so I've got flat wounds on it at the minute. It's just amazing. And it's like, as soon as I had it, I took a bit of a gamble because I hadn't played it when I ordered it. But he was very kind enough to give me an endorsement deal. So I thought, okay, let's try that. I got it. Amazing. Best bass I've ever played by a mile. And I mean, I've had every bass under the sun, Yeah, I mean, Fenders, old Fenders, new Fenders, a lot of Gibsons, a lot of old school Gibsons, a lot of the more modern stuff, Warwicks, all kinds of stuff. And it's by far the best one I've played. It's really light on stage, which is nice. It cuts through really well. I guess the pickups, the sound-wise, they're not too dissimilar from if a Rickenbacker and a jazz pickup had babies, somewhere in the middle there, quite punchy. Yeah, I put flats on anyway, just for the band usually, for the style I play. So yeah, that's my main bass. Dabble in others as well. I'm in the Hofner at the minute. Just for sometimes on recording, I'll want a different sound. Really, one of my favorite bass tones of all time is Paul McCartney bass tone. Actually, not just the stuff with the Hofner. I really dig some of the kind of 70s, even the 80s stuff with a Rickenbacker that he had. Yeah. The very, very kind of low dub kind of sound stuff like Silly Love Songs or Mrs. Vanderbilt, that song, the kind of very kind of low, very heavy in the mix bass sound. So I dabble now and again on some of the stuff with a Hofner with that. I've got a bass down here, which is made by, it's another custom shop by a company called Gamma, you might have heard of. Those guys are based out of New Jersey. Shout out to Joey from Gamma because he's a really nice guy, actually. He sorted me out with that bass. That was my first endorsement deal. He's a really cool guy. So he gave us that. But also we went over to New York one time. New York's right next to New Jersey. Yes. And we had a show with a very famous American guy called Delbert McClinton. Because of the whole logistics of taking guitars out there and stuff, it was a nightmare. So Gamma, Joy, the dude, he sorted us out with instruments while we were over there, so we didn't have to worry about that, which was cool. So it's like a super jazz bass. That's nice. It's got very hot pickups, very easy to play. And bass-wise, that's about it. I've got a P bass as well that I use now and again. I tend to keep it around that level. If I get any more than about 4 or 5 basses, I find I don't play. There's 1 or 2 that get neglected and I don't play. And I'm not a hoarder. I don't. Although I have had periods. Well, you're smiling because you know what it's like as a bass player. You probably have 1,000 basses.
No, actually, I keep it a very small group. I think if you're lucky and you find the instrument that talks to you, like your Crom, you kind of stop looking. You really go, why am I going to check out anything else? I mean, and granted, I see some beautiful instruments, but I've already found one that feels great to me, and so I tend to be less searching. But I know that many people with the gear acquisition syndrome, as we have mentioned, are in search of that holy grail bass, and especially if they dedicate themselves to a particular music form or sound, then that also fits kind of the niche. Because as you've mentioned, I mean, you talk about studio musicians, they will go in and maybe need a P bass sound, or they'll need a jazz bass sound, or they'll want the Hofner kind of thing. And, there's, different occasions. It's like the tool belt. There's a time when I need a special tool, but most of the time I work with a hammer and nails. So I agree. But moving on with basses, what kind of strings are you using? You mentioned half rounds, but do you have a particular brand?
Yeah, I use Ernie balls. I have again Ernie Ball. Sort me out. Those guys are amazing. And it's handy. It's handy when you have a partnership with someone who you actually are proud to endorse. And I love Ernie Ball stuff. I've dabbled in the others. I've dabbled with labellas. I was into them for a little while. Actually, the Hofner actually has Hofner bass strings on it. It doesn't have Ernie Balls on them. And that's mainly just due to, like, the scale length and stuff. The Hofners are obviously designed for that scale length, they're perfect, and they're actually quite reasonably priced. They fit and they sound great. So the Hofner's got Hofners on it, but all my others have Ernie Ball stuff on. I think they've got, I'm trying to think of the exact brand. Yeah, the flat wounds, I think they're 40s or 45s. I don't like them too heavy, Raul. I like low of the fretboard, very smooth, very flat for speed. That's how I like it set up. So yeah, Ernie Ball are great.
Got you. And amplification-wise, I see the orange on your other flank. Tell us that you're playing through orange amplification.
Yeah. That is a Terra bass.
Yes.
So that is a 500 watt. It's what they call hybrid, isn't it? So it's got tubes in it. So the preamp has tubes. Preamp has tubes, but the power amp is class D. So it's light, so it's 500 watt, but it's got that warm, gooey tube sound as well.
Nice.
And it is, super light. So it's great. It's great for gigs. So I run that. Usually, my main rig is I run that through what I'm sitting on, which is a 4x10 orange they call it an OBC 410. Basically, the 410 cab, which is great. It sounds immense. Probably the best cabs I've ever played. Literally, I mean, they're so heavy. The 4x10s, it's definitely a two-man job, but it's worth it for the sound. They're amazing. But that being said, when I'm not using an amp, which is getting more frequent, I use the preamp. They've got a new preamp out called the Bass Butler, which is amazing. If anyone's interested in amps and stuff, I just shot a video recently for Orange, like a little demo video, promo video for the Bass Butler. Well, in the UK anyway. I know the guy from Slipknot did the American one, and they're obviously a lot heavier than my band, which is blues rock.
Yeah.
But I did the one for the guys over here in England.
Hi, I'm Adam Rigg from the Bad Day Blues Band. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about the Bass Butler Biamp preamp. Today we're going to be using a Matthias Krom passive bass. I've got flat wounds on it today. We've also got another bass with some round wounds on it, a Fender. We're going to be going into a Terra bass head. That is going to be going into two OBC 112 cabs, lightweight cabs. And obviously we're going to be using the Bass Butler. But yet, very, very simple setup. So there's not going to be any massive EQs going on from the basses. So the tones and stuff you're going to be hearing are all going to be down to the Orange equipment. In particular, the Bass Butler. Okay, so just looking through the features on the Bass Butler. Bottom channel is your bass amp. You have volume, treble, bass and compression. The top channel is your guitar amp. You have volume, treble, mid, bass and distortion or gain. And you can mix them as you will. You'll see on the top here you've got a ground lift if you're getting hum. You have a clean XLR out and a dirty XLR out. And you also have an amp sim out as well. And you've got a little thing here for your expression pedal if you use those. And of course your in is where your guitar goes in here. So let's have a little bit of just the bottom, which is just the bass. So we're just going to tweak it a little bit just to get a little bit down. I'm going to take some treble off, I'm going to put some bass on, turn the volume up. We've got no compression on currently at all, and it sounds a little bit like this. Now we're just going to add in some compression to see what the difference in sound is, and you can tweak it to your taste. Okay, we're just going to walk through the guitar channel at the top. This is activated by pressing your foot switch there. The light goes from blue to green. And you can blend this in with the bass as much as you want. You can have just very little amounts of guitar amp, or you can have a lot. It sounds a little bit like this. We're pretty much at 12 o'clock here, blended in with the bass channel with a little bit of compression. Add a little bit more gain into that, if that's your bag. And yeah, it's fully versatile. So you can turn down the bass, you can turn the guitar amp up, you can add a bit more compression, a bit less gain, and really tweak it to get your sound. So just talking a little bit about the XLRs, you've got two coming out of here. You've got a clean and a dirty amp sim XLR out. And this really allows your front of house engineer to blend the sound that the audience hears. So you can have a totally different type of sound on stage as to you do off stage. You could, for example, have a very clean sound on stage and blend a little bit of the dirty amp sim off stage for the audience to hear, or vice versa. And you can really get very versatile with the different types of sound that you can hear and that other people can hear. Super useful. There's also a blended amp out. If you don't want to use the XLRs, you can use the blended amp out, which is just a regular output, which keeps it nice and simple, which I've also used. But yeah, I've also used direct out from my Bass, which is also another way you could use it. Also a feature of the Bass Butler is you have an expression pedal input. So you can blend in the amount of guitar amp that you want into your sound. So for example, if you were playing a song and you wanted to a little bit more guitar for a solo section or something, you can blend it in and then pull it back out as you would with an expression pedal. So it's great, can't recommend them enough. The Bass Butler Biamp Bass Pre.
So yeah, the Bass Butler, it's brilliant. It's like a twin channel preamp. So like in the 70s, actually, and on from the 70s, there was this trend of running your bass through one bass amp and one guitar amp.
Yes.
So you get the kind of the grit and the top end from the guitar amp, and you wouldn't lose the bottom end. Well, the Bass Butler is dual, so you get a guitar amp and a bass amp at the same time as a preamp. So quite often I don't even need a head and a cab. I just use that into the PA, and it just sounds great with a Crom. I mean, it depends where you're playing, what size PA they have, and if some engineers are like, some sound engineers are very old school and they go, no, we need a proper bass amp, whereas others are like, please don't bring a bass amp.
Yeah.
Or you have to. It's like you said, tools for the trade. It's like session work. I will always have a P bass if I have to do any session work for anyone. Incidentally, Raul, if any of your listeners are after a session bass player, please hit me up. I'm available.
Well, and in this population, with most of our readers being bass players themselves, if they ever have a big bass party, then you can be invited. But I digress, and I'll come back. Now, you've got the instruments, you've got the amplifications and preamps. Do you have a choice in cables to connect, particularly between the two?
Yeah, well, again, because I'm friends with Ernie Ball, they sort me out with cables. And again, luckily, they do some of the best cables in the world. They're just amazing. I've dabbled in going wireless. I tried that for a little while. It's okay. I did have a couple of cutouts and it annoyed me a little bit. So I was like, okay, I'm going back to wired. But again, it depends on the size, stage and venue and stuff. If we're doing big festivals, we played, I think, Isle of Wight last year we played. That was definitely one where I needed a wireless because the stage is big and it's a shame, it's a waste to just stand
in one spot. Yeah.
Yeah. So I used the wireless for that. But usually it's Ernie Ball cables. I like the gold tip Ernie Ball cables. They're very good.
There's so much exciting stuff and gear is evolving and instruments are evolving. It's always interesting to hear. I think that a lot of times other bass players will pick up on details when they hear you play and they might go, oh, I like this particular sound or I like this particular thing. I want to duplicate that, which is one of the, I think, kind of the biggest reasons that we all talk about gear, to know like what, it's like, what are you eating? What did you get in your lunchbox? Oh, I want some of that. Yeah, that looks good.
I love that. And that's part of the fun, isn't it? I mean, if you put aside like the band that you're in and the thing like that, it's the hobby aspect of listening to James Jamerson and then getting into that little groove of talking to people about the P bass and the amp and the setup, and then spending your time finding that gear and then duplicating that sound, or the Paul McCartney Hofner or the whoever it is, or the Jayco Jazz. Going down those little rabbit holes is great fun, isn't it? And even if you, I mean, I do it all the time. Like I get that particular instrument to get that sound, and I master that sound. And then 6 months down the line, I'll move on and I'll sell it on, and I'll go on to the next step. But it's good because it's good for my education. It's learning new things, new sounds. Mm-hmm. So it's good fun. I love all of that stuff.
Gotcha. So looking ahead, the best place, if we want to know what's going on with the Bad Day Blues Band, the website to go to is?
It's badday.net, and that's bad-day.net. Mm-hmm. That's our website. But we're probably more active on all the socials as everyone else is. Instagram, we're all on there every day. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all kinds of stuff. You'll find us. The Bad Day Blues Band, you'll find us.
Excellent. Well, Adam, we appreciate you taking time. I know we're talking during the pandemic. It's very challenging for many people, but it has allowed us to Skype into people's homes and have a chance to chat, making the world a lot smaller because you're in the UK, I'm in Washington State. It's just great to stay in touch and know that, this is going on, even in spite of all the other things, that the music is going strong no matter what. Folks, you've seen him here, Adam Rigg on Bass Musician Magazine.
Thank you very much. Thank you.